Well, have you ever had something that you thought was valuable but didn't turn out to be so? Perhaps you collected Beanie Babies, Pokemon cards, baseball cards, thinking one day, hey, these are going to be worth something. And then they get you like a couple bucks at a garage sale, right? We're not always the best arbiters of what is actually worth something. Maybe it was a trendy gadget you got and you thought this is going to be so helpful, and it's just collecting dust in an attic. Maybe it was an investment opportunity you thought was going to really pay dividends, and it seemed like it was a sure thing until it was not. At that time, it felt important, right? Maybe you even kind of molded your life around that thing in some sense, but now you look back and you wonder, gosh, why did I care so much about that? See, here's the truth. Everyone treasures something. The question is not if we treasure, it is what we treasure. Last week, Jesus challenged us to think about where we seek our reward. He asked us, are we living to please God or impress people? Whose attention are we really seeking? Are we focused on receiving the eternal rewards from God or the temporary rewards from people? He said that if you live for that earthly reward, that's all you're going to get. But if you live for a heavenly reward, then God is going to honor that. That was last week. Here, in this text that we just read, God is continuing that idea. He is showing us that what we look for in our reward shows our heart. It shows what we treasure. And so Jesus is asking us today this question, what do you treasure? What do you treasure? Because here's the danger. What you value most may not be what's most valuable. You might spend your whole life chasing treasures only to realize that they weren't worth it, because you weren't chasing the right treasures. And so to help us figure out what is the right treasure and to help us figure out whether or not it is worth it, Jesus is going to give us 3 ways here in which what we treasure impacts our lives. Here's number 1. If you're taking notes, you can follow along on the back side of your bulletin if you picked one up. What you treasure determines your reward. Look at verses 19 through 20. Jesus is saying there are only 2 kinds of treasure here. Number 1 is earthly treasures. And so the thing with earthly treasures, they don't last. They fade, they get stolen, ultimately they lose their value. Earthly treasures are temporary and they are unreliable. You see, the problem with earthly treasures, we often get really confused about this, is not that they're bad. Things like money, things like status, things like possessions, they're not evil, they're not bad. Scripture affirms that all those things are gifts of God to be taken with thankfulness to Him. The issue is whenever we elevate all that stuff higher than God, beyond what they're meant to be, whenever we rely on these things, we pursue them above all else, or make them our foundation. We say, this is what's going to make me feel secure. If my bank account has this amount of money, or I have this amount of popularity amongst my peers, that's going to be what gives me a sense of value and security. But Jesus warns that if you dedicate your life in this way, if you store up earthly treasure as your goal, that's only going to lead to frustration and emptiness. Why? Because material wealth isn't enough. It's never going to be enough. We'll always want just a little bit more. There was a survey in 1992 where people were asked in America, how much extra money, how much more money would you need to have the American dream? Those who were earning $25,000 a year at the time thought they needed $54,000 a year. But those who were earning $100,000 a year thought they needed $192,000 a year on average. And so what's the pattern here? Well, most people believe they need twice as much as the stuff they've got in order for them to be happy. in order for them to live that life, that dream. But the Apostle Paul, he tells us a very different story. He shows us that the secret to happiness, the secret to what we're searching after, to true gain, is not having more. It is having contentment. In 1 Timothy 6, verse 6, he says, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain." And so even if you get what you want, studies show that, yeah, you may be excited about it in the beginning, but your happiness levels at some point plateau. They don't last. You may be pumped in the beginning, but eventually, in our psychology and who we are, we just kind of adapt to whatever the quality of life we have is. And those people who are living the high life and those people who are in poverty, there's not much of a discrepancy between them and their overall satisfaction with life. What simply once felt special becomes the new normal once we get used to it. So I'm not saying that money isn't useful. I'm not saying that it can't buy you freedom from certain kinds of anxiety or hardship. I'm not saying it can't open other doors in your life, important doors. Sometimes having an amount of money or having a security of food, of shelter, all that kind of stuff, it can free you to focus on other things. So don't hear me discounting that. But this is what I'm saying. Money can buy you a lot, but it cannot buy you contentment. If you're focusing on your material resources to give you a sense of stability and contentment with life, it's never going to work. We have to rely on something else. Whatever material success you achieve, it will never bring you a lasting satisfaction because no earthly treasure lasts forever. None of it does. Money can disappear, possessions can wear out, status will fade. And even if, and it's a big if, even if you manage to hold on to all that stuff, death is going to make sure you're parted with it, right? There are no U-Hauls behind hearses. You look at the pharaohs, and you see them being buried with all their gold, all their fine possessions, thinking, if I'm buried with it, I'll be able to take it with me to the next life. Where's that stuff now? It's sitting in museums or it's buried in the ground. You can't take that stuff with you, not into eternity. And that's why Jesus makes the second point. So the first kind of treasure is an earthly treasure. The second kind of treasure is a heavenly treasure. And so in contrast with an earthly treasure, heavenly treasures, they can't be lost. They can't be stolen. They don't fade. In fact, death doesn't separate you from your treasures if they are eternal. It joins you to them. We get pretty easily what earthly treasures are, but what are heavenly treasures? What does it mean to stow away heavenly treasures? Well, that is living for the kingdom, God's kingdom, rather than personal gain. It is investing in the eternal. All these eternal things, people's souls, the gospel work, loving others, being obedient to Christ, growing in that vertical and horizontal relationship. It is choosing faithfulness over comfort. And the beautiful thing is that whenever you store up treasures in heaven, it brings joy both now and into eternity. There's a kind of present reward we get whenever we focus on the heavenly things. There's a sense of contentment we get, a kind of deep satisfaction we get from doing God's will. But even greater still is the eternal reward, the ultimate enjoyment we get on the other side of eternity. Between these two, Jesus, he tells us we need to figure out which one of these we're going to pursue. What's your treasure? What are you going to pursue with your life? Is it going to be the earthly treasure or the heavenly treasure? And while we're considering that, Jesus, he reminds us of the ROI we can expect. You're going to get a whole lot better of a return on investment if you focus on the eternal. Because treasuring earthly things, it may get you an earthly reward, if. It's not guaranteed. Many people focus on the earthly stuff and end up with nothing. But if you treasure the eternal stuff, all these eternal things, then you have a promise from God that you will receive that reward. It's a big difference. And so where you choose to invest, Jesus is saying that everything about you is going to reflect that. Whatever you treasure, that's going to change your heart. Look at verse 21. Your heart follows your treasure. If your greatest treasure is here on earth, then your heart is going to be tied to these temporary earthly things. But if your greatest treasure is in heaven, your heart is going to be tied to eternal heavenly things. So building upon that point, here's number 2. What you treasure will not only determine your reward, it will also determine your vision. And so to illustrate how the heart follows your treasure, Jesus, he uses this metaphor of the eye, right? Your eyes, making the point that what you focus on with your eyes, that determines your direction, right? If you wanted to go anywhere, what do you have to use to get there? Your eyes, right? You see the path to go. And just like how these physical eyes, they guide our bodies, our spiritual eyes, they guide our soul. Wherever you focus, you follow. What you fixate on is going to shape your desires. It's going to shape your choices. Ultimately, it's going to shape your destiny. And that's why we have to fix our eyes upon the right stuff. If you fixate on the wrong stuff, that's exactly what you're going to hit. Whenever I was in leading mountain bike tours a few years ago, one of the things that I had to learn was you can't look at all these trees along your path or you're going to run straight into them, right? If you're distracted with the nature, say you're driving over, a cliff, you have to make sure you're not getting so distracted because wherever you look is where you're naturally going to veer, right? And so if you're skiing or you're mountain biking, you ever wonder how like these skiers weave in through all these trees? They're not looking at the trees, they're looking in between the trees. If you're looking at those trees, you're going to hit them. But if you're looking on the path to follow, it's actually very easy to go that exact path. The same thing is true spiritually. Whenever you fixate on material things, whenever you fixate on status, wealth, your life is going to move in that direction, sometimes at a very great cost. But if you fixate on God's kingdom, your life is going to align with his purposes. And so don't let your vision become distracted by focusing on the wrong treasure. That's Jesus' point. If you're too busy looking at that wrong stuff, hitting all of those trees, you're going to miss the very good thing that God wants you to see and experience. I want to give you a test really quick. Go ahead and turn your attention to the screen.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
So that's actually an ad for Watching Out for Cyclists that the mayor of London put on. And I like that line that was there at the very end there. It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. That applies not only to cyclists, not only to moonwalking bears, it also applies to God. If you're focusing on the wrong stuff, if your eyes are locked onto earthly treasures, you're going to miss God even whenever he's right in front of you. If you're too focused on what the world calls success, you're going to miss what truly matters. And Jesus' point is that you can either focus on light or you can focus on darkness. And whatever you choose that you're going to look at, that is going to determine your life. We can't miss that. It's going to determine who we are. A bad eye, it's going to look at the darkness, and it's going to bring darkness into your life. It's the lamp of the body. A healthy eye, it's going to look at the light, and it's going to bring light into your life. So what does that look like? Well, a bad eye is going to focus on earthly treasure. It's going to focus on money, possessions, status, and it's going to see those things as the end goal for our own personal glory and satisfaction. But a good eye, a healthy eye, is going to focus on the heavenly treasure. And it's going to still see all that same worldly stuff, but it's going to see them in the right way. They're going to see those things as tools for God's glory, not our glory. And so which of those kinds of visions will you have? Whichever one you have, it's going to change everything about you. You may say, no, this little selfishness I have over here in this little area, that little bit where I just allow myself to be pretty selfish, that's not going to affect the rest of me. But no. That's Jesus' point, is that's not just one area of your life. What you see with your eyes, what you choose to focus on, that affects every part of you. If you, just as an eye who looks at darkness will bring darkness into your body, a wrong attitude about all of our possessions, what our treasures are, it's going to bring darkness into our whole being. If you don't believe me, if you don't believe that your eyes have a say in all the rest of your reality, take a look at this next video.
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
What do you hear? What do you hear? That is embarrassing. Well, keep your eyes on the screen and keep listening.
That is embarrassing! 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 That is embarrassing!
Did you hear different things? Yeah. It's funny how that works, right? Because you heard the same thing every time, but what you chose to focus your eyes on each time affected your experience. It affected your reality. Change the wording you're looking at with your eyes, you heard something different. How is it that your eyes can experience something for your ears? Well, it's because they're connected. Everything in us is interconnected. And so if you're giving yourself permission, I'm going to be selfish over here in this little part of my life. I'm going to compartmentalize my life, and some parts of my life are going to be holy and other parts might not be so. You're lying to yourself. You can't segment your life up. We're all so interconnected. A quote that I'll very frequently see on social media, I don't know who made it, it makes the same point. Easy to spot a yellow car when you're always thinking of a yellow car. Easy to spot opportunity when you're always thinking of opportunity. Easy to spot reasons to be mad when you're always thinking of being mad. You become what you constantly think about. Watch yourself. So to put this all simply, what you look for is what your life will look like. And we have to be careful because we might just get what we're looking for. Here's number 3. Not only does what we treasure determine our reward, our vision, but it also determines our loyalty. If you look at verse 24, you see this. Jesus, he ends this section by confronting us with the very hard reality, you cannot serve two masters. Not you shouldn't, not it's difficult to do it. He says you can't. It's impossible to serve two masters. Why? Because a master demands loyalty. Jesus, he's having this master-slave relationship in mind. You can't be loyal to two opposing things. It's not like having two jobs. A slave is completely devoted to his master. He can't serve two. We're the same way. We can't have a split allegiance. And this is where we deceive ourselves because we believe we can. We believe in the compartmentalization of our lives. We believe that we can serve both God and money. We believe that we can balance our devotion with God and having a devotion to wealth or ambitions of personal nature. And Jesus is saying that's not how it works. It's not. Quit lying to yourself. You will always end up loving one and despising the other. And Jesus, he presents a stark choice. Are you going to serve God or are you going to serve money? One will be your master, one's going to set your priorities, one's going to control your heart. And if you serve God's kingdom, that calls for generosity, that calls for trust, that calls for surrender. But if you serve money's kingdom, that calls for greed. It calls for control. It calls for self-reliance. And if you choose to go that way, money is a very cruel master. It never satisfies. No matter how much you have, you'll always want more. It creates anxiety. The more you have, the more you can lose. And it's going to burn you out. It's going to take your loyalty. It's going to take your time. It's going to take your energy. If money is your master, your biggest fears are going to be about losing wealth. Your happiest moments are whenever you gain wealth. Your life's direction, it's going to be determined by your financial goals rather than God's calling. That's what it means to have the right eyes, the right heart, the right loyalty. But if God, on the other hand, is your master, he gives you security. He gives you contentment. He gives you an eternal purpose, a purpose that is just beyond yourself, beyond your own senses of satisfaction or whatever personal ambition we can summon up. He provides us what we need. Not always what we want, but what we need. And he frees us from being consumed by all of this temporary worry, this materialism. Who here knows about the crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin? Okay. Tragic thing whenever he passed away, but he had a show for a while where he was teaching people about raising animals and preserving animal habitats. And he has an old interview he did, where he was really just talking about how excited he is to be living out this life purpose. And he talks a little bit about his opinion on money, too. Let's watch that video.
What good is a fast car, a flash house, and a gold-plated dunny to me? Absolutely no good at all. I've been put on this planet to protect wildlife and wilderness areas, which in essence is going to help humanity. I want to have the purest oceans. I want to be able to drink water straight out of that creek. I want to stop the ozone layer. I want to save the world. And you know, money's great. I can't get enough money. And you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to buy wilderness areas with it. Every single cent I get goes straight into conservation. And guess what, Charles? I don't give a rip whose money it is, mate. I'll use it and I'll spend it on buying land. I wake up in the morning and I'm on fire. I just can't do enough. It drives me crazy that I've got to go to sleep.
I don't remember doing a story with anyone as unpredictable and foolhardy and dangerous as you.
Good.
And as much fun.
Yeah, well, that's what life's about, isn't it? That's what life's about, mate. Just getting out there, having fun, following your passion, just being enthusiastic,
I love his heart in that. He's just so excited about living this purpose out. Every day, he doesn't even want to go to sleep because he's so excited about every day living this out. And he's right. As it pertains to money, money has a purpose beyond ourselves. We shouldn't think of our money as just satisfying some selfish craving we have, but we should use it as a tool. He saw his money there as a tool, not something to hoard, not something to invest in something temporary, but something that is greater than himself. What I wanted Steve Irwin to do is just take that final step of seeing it as an act of worship to God. Because you heard what he said at the end. I think we actually have a greater purpose to our lives, which is glorifying God. Because all this earthly stuff, I agree, in preserving habitats and all that stuff, and I think we can do that for the glory of God, absolutely. But you know what? This earth is going to pass away. What's not going to pass away is the eternal. And so whenever we start thinking of ourselves and our money as a vessel to be used for God's purposes, everything in our perspective changes. And this is the point. Money itself is not the issue. What Jesus is concerned about here is our loyalty. Instead of us serving money, we should serve God with our money. Many people say they love God, but their true master is revealed in what they sacrifice for. And here is the key principle. You will sacrifice for your God. And so if you sacrifice for the sake of money, but you won't sacrifice for the sake of Jesus, then money is your God. If you constantly justify greed, your self-interest, material obsession, but you struggle to reveal your heart to God in giving to Him, then money has your heart. And I don't think this just pertains to the wealthy. I think both the rich and the poor can have this issue. We can both be equally enslaved. Greed, covetousness, obsession with wealth, It's not something that is unique to income level. It can affect every single one of us. It's about our heart. Who does our heart actually belong to? And so we have to take a very difficult introspective question in mind and ask ourselves today, what treasure has your heart? Ask yourself this question. What treasure has my heart? You can only have one of two treasures. It will either be heaven or earth. Which will you let have your heart? Jesus, he's given us a reality check today. And so I want to encourage you this week, take inventory of your life. Ask yourself, where are you investing? Where are you storing up treasure? What is consuming your vision? Who or what is really calling the shots in your life? If an outsider looked at your life, they just saw all the things that you're involved in, what it is you're prioritizing, what would they say about you? What would they say your treasure is? See, this is the treasure test, and what we do in answering this, that's going to reveal our heart. And so there's a choice for you. If your treasure is on earth, your heart will be also. If your eye is clouded by materialism, your whole life will be dark. If your master is money, you will always be a slave to it. But if you look clearly to heaven, you try to serve God's kingdom, treasuring it deeply, and you're seeing him as your master, your heart is going to be full of eternal joy, eternal contentment. Your vision will be clear and focused. Your life will be free to fully serve God. You're tearing down the trees so you don't have to be distracted by them. I want to encourage you to think about this and ask this question in your small groups. What would change if you radically entrusted God with your resources? If you entrusted your resources, your focus, your devotion to him? How would your life look different? What would be your reward? What would be your vision? What would be your loyalty? In a moment, we're going to respond in a tangible way, giving. And what giving does is it helps us loose our grip on the things of this world so that we can invest ourselves into God's kingdom. We're letting go of the temporary, and we're holding on to the eternal. And so inside your bulletins, you can see some ways that we can give during this time, as well as some reasons that we might give. Before we do this, what I want to do is just take a time just in quiet reflection and quiet prayer. And so if you would bow your heads with me. Think about this and ask these questions of yourself. What might God be calling me to release? What resources do I need to surrender? What ways is God calling me to commit myself to him? Take a moment and pray over these things.